Hello, it's Abby here. I'm back this week to show you guys how to make something else really delicious. This week I figured, okay, we did the bread, we did the naan, now we need to make something sweet. It's time. So I figured why not make some delicious homemade cinnamon rolls. I've got all the stuff. I'm going to show you guys how to make it. It's all ready to go. So if you follow me over, I will show you guys what you need to get started to make your own cinnamon rolls at home. It's easy, it's fun, it's totally worth it, it's delicious. Let's go. Alright guys, I'm here at my little workstation ready to show you how to make some homemade cinnamon rolls. The first part, this is kind of a recurring theme in all of my videos, but we have to let our yeast activate. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to start off with 1 cup of warm milk, not super hot. If it's too hot, it's going to actually kill the yeast. So pretty warm, but not scalding hot or anything like that. We're going to pour it into a larger size bowl here. And then we are going to pour in a ½ cup of white granulated sugar. Just going to dump that right in. And then finally we are going to do 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. So it's going to go into the warm milk and sugar bath there. And I'm just going to give this a stir with my whisk. This is going to take a few minutes to activate. So I'm going to let it sit here and we will check back in with you guys with the next steps when this is ready to go. Alright, so the yeast is ready to go in the warm milk and sugar mixture. It's floating. You can tell it's just, I don't know, I guess I could just tell it's ready to go. It's been waiting for about 10 minutes. So now we are going to add in our melted butter. So we need a ½ cup of melted butter. That's actually just 1 stick of butter. Just melt it. I'm going to kind of dump mine in there. Mine got slightly solid from sitting, but as long as it's not like, pure solid where you won't be able to work with it, this will work just fine. And this is unsalted butter. We need 2 teaspoons of salt. Here's our salt here. We're just going to mix that right in. I'm going to give this a quick stir, kind of get that all incorporated. And we are getting ready to add in 2 eggs. It looks like kind of a weird mixture, but it's going to come together when we add the flour. I know it's really thin right now. Alright, and so now we are ready for 2 eggs. You don't need to beat them or anything. You can just plop them right in here as is. So there's 1, and there's 2. Just going to put my shells aside. And again, I'm going to give this a nice mix with my whisk and just kind of get everything incorporated, break those yolks, get the eggs evenly distributed throughout there. There we go. And again, that butter was a little bit on the cooler side, probably than what I should have done. But again, once I add the flour, it's all going to come together. It's going to look a lot smoother than this. So I am not worried about it. Okay, so that's about good to go. Eggs are in there, spread out. Alright, so now we are going to just gently add our flour. For this recipe, it calls for actually 4½ cups of flour. I know that seems like a lot of flour. This is going to make about 12 cinnamon rolls. So if it's, just a couple of you at home, you can always cut this recipe in half. We'll post the recipe with the video like we always do. But I'm making a full batch today. Maybe we'll give some to some neighbors. We'll see. But we'll decide that when we come to it. So right now I'm going to add 4½ cups of flour. What I'm going to do is kind of add the flour in there a little bit at a time. And I'm going to kind of mix it a little bit with a spatula as I go. Just kind of scraping the sides. Just kind of getting everything incorporated in there. Hydrating the dough. And then add some more flour. And this is just white, regular, all-purpose flour. It's not pastry flour. You probably could use pastry flour or whole wheat flour too if you wanted to, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm using. I'm just kind of mixing that. You can see the dough is starting to kind of come together and thicken a little bit, but we still have probably about 2 cups of flour to go. And eventually I'm going to have to start using my hands when this becomes too much of a hassle to stir with my spatula. So here's about another cup of flour. I'm going to kind of sprinkle in there, maybe a little bit more. Probably got about a cup or a half a cup left. Stirring this in. There we go. Just kind of trying to hydrate as much of the dough as possible before we have to knead it with our hands. Scrape those wet bits off the side of the bowl. Get everything in there. And there's our shaggy dough forming. Alright, so for this next bit, I'm going to actually use my hands. This is the rest of our flour. I'm going to pour it right in there. And I already know it's not going to work well to stir that with a spatula at this point, so I am going to use my hands. There's a little bit of flour in my hands there. And I'm just going to kind of squeeze this together until a dough forms. After this dough forms, I am going to knead it on a clean work surface for about 10 minutes. But for right now, we're just going to let this dough come together and try to get all those dried bits of flour off the bottom of the bowl. Oops. This part can get a little bit messy, but that's okay. That's the fun of it. And I'm just kind of scraping with my hands and pressing down, trying to get everything in there. There we go. We get most of the dry bits off the bottom of the bowl at this point. And we're going to knead this bowl again after we knead the dough to let the dough proof. So you can just put it aside for a minute. You don't have to throw it right in the sink because you will use it again. So at this point, our dough is kind of coming together. I'm going to sprinkle down a little bit of flour on my work surface here. A little bit more. I always keep a little extra flour handy just for this kind of thing. We're going to put our giant dough ball there. If there's any little scraps left there, you can kind of just add them to your dough. And this could be done in a mixer too, like with a dough hook, but I think it's nice and relaxing to knead the dough and use your hands. So at this stage, I'm going to knead the dough for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to put it in the oven to proof. So I like I said, you can leave it out to proof if it's a warmer day, but I set my oven to 200 degrees, and then I'm going to turn it off and put the dough in and make kind of a proofing chamber. And what that does is it just kind of expedites the proofing process. The dough will need to double in size, and that'll just make it go a lot quicker than waiting like 8 hours. But if it was a warmer day, you could probably leave it out. But it's a little cooler today, so I'm going to use my oven as kind of a tool in this, and let that help the dough proof. So for right now, I am just going to have at this for about 10 minutes until the dough becomes nice and smooth. And if you need to add a little bit extra flour along the way, you can, if it's too sticky. Alright, so the dough has been kneaded for 10 minutes. You can see now it's nice and smooth. It's a little bit tighter, more uniform. So I've shaped it into a ball here. It doesn't have to be a perfect ball. You just kind of get it all in like a ball. And we are going to let this proof in our proofing chamber oven until it doubles in size. So my oven is up at temperature right now. It's 200 degrees. So I'm actually going to turn the oven off. And we are going to use our large mixing bowl. If there's any dry bits in there, you can kind of dump those out, any excess flour or anything. And I'm just going to add a little bit of melted butter just to kind of keep this non-stick for when our dough doubles in size. I'm just going for it, using my hand here, just kind of greasing this a little bit. Alright, and then we've got our dough ball here, ready to go. I'm going to plop it right in our bowl there, and we're just going to cover it. You can use plastic wrap, tin foil, or a clean cloth. I'm just going to use a clean cloth for this right here. So I'm going to lightly cover it. You don't want the towel or the plastic wrap touching the dough, so you kind of just keep it taut on the top of the bowl there. And I am just going to quickly pop this into the oven, trying not to let out a lot of that residual 200 degree heat. So yeah, we can check back in with this probably in about an hour. I'm going to see if it has doubled in size. When it's about doubled in size, we'll know we're ready to go to the next steps. All right, we're going to open the oven now. It's been probably about an hour and a half. We're going to check on our dough to see if it has doubled in size. Still feels slightly warm in here, so that's a good sign that it trapped all that heat in. Let's take a look at this dough, and yeah, that definitely doubled in size. That looks great. It's nice and smooth. It's puffy. We are definitely ready to go on to the next step, which is going to be rolling it out and then putting the filling in, which is that cinnamon, butter, sugar, delicious mixture. So, oh, that's very satisfying. Okay, so we're going to take some flour. We're going to put it on our clean work surface here. Kind of sprinkle out some flour. And for this step, you're definitely going to need a rolling pin, so make sure you have that handy. I'll put all the other ingredients aside. So I'm going to take my dough. Oh, it feels great. It's actually still slightly warm from being in that proofing chamber. I'm just going to move this bowl out of the way. We're done with that. This feels awesome. It's smooth. It's nice and soft. I mean, you can see it's definitely ready to be worked with. So I'm going to kind of flatten it out a little bit. We're aiming to get this into a larger rectangular shape. So I'm going to take my rolling pin and sprinkle a little bit of flour on here to make this non-stick. I'm going to show you guys some things I do to make this into a rectangle because, as you can see right now, it's kind of still in that round oval shape, but I'm going to kind of start to roll it out slowly. Oh, this is awesome. It feels great. Okay. So we're rolling, trying to get it about an even thickness all throughout. And it's still in that oval shape. So I cheat. I take my bench scraper and I'm just going to actually cut off the dough at this point and put it and we're going to make this rectangular shape. We're not going to get rid of this dough. We're still going to use it. We worked hard to make that. We're definitely going to keep it. So what I like to do, since no one's going to see the inside of your cinnamon rolls, I just add it right back on top like this. It's still all going to be part of our mixture, but now we have that rectangular shape, that base to work with. Kind of flatten it out like this. There's nothing better than like squishing warm dough. It feels so cool. Alright, and again, we're going to take our rolling pin. You can put a little bit of flour on top of this just to make it kind of non-stick. A little bit more on here. And we're going to keep rolling it out into more of that longer rectangular shape. Lovely. And you don't want this too thin. This is not like a paper thin thickness we're going for. We're probably going for about 1/4 of an inch maybe. And it doesn't have to be an absolute perfect rectangle, but the more rectangular you can get, it's going to be easier when we get to the next step. Okay. That looks pretty good. So now, I'd say that is our rectangle. That feels great, looks good. Not too sticky. Okay, so now we are ready for the next step, which is to make and add the filling, what's going to be the filling of the cinnamon roll. We're just going to add it all on in one big layer. So to start off, we need 1/2 cup of butter, which again is 1 stick of butter. This recipe calls for a lot of butter. It's fine. It's all worth it when you taste it. This is softened butter, so I'm just using my hands. You can probably use a knife or an offset spatula or something, but I really just like to take my butter. You can microwave it a little bit or let it sit out at room temperature just so it kind of gets to this spreadable consistency. And you're just going to spread it all over the surface of your dough. And you want to spread it as evenly as you can. You don't want any big globs of butter in any particular place. So we're just kind of spreading this out as even as we can, all the way to the edge. we have to do a layer now of cinnamon sugar. So I have here, what do I have? A cup of white sugar and 2.5 tablespoons of cinnamon. And I'm going to add these into a bowl. You can whisk it, or again, you could probably use your hand. I'm going to use a fork to just kind of get this all evenly mixed. Like that. Lovely. And again, this is going to make 12 cinnamon rolls, larger cinnamon rolls, so you do want quite a bit. And you can use brown sugar also, but I found I really like the results with the white sugar and the cinnamon. Alright, so now there's our dough with our butter. We're going to take our cinnamon sugar mixture and just try to evenly sprinkle it on top. And I know it looks like quite a bit, and that's because it is, but the butter and the cinnamon and the sugar are all going to kind of melt into like a nice glazy goo, and that's going to be the filling for our cinnamon rolls. So I'm going to kind of just spread this out again, make sure it's pretty even in there. Okay, so for our next step, we are going to actually roll the cinnamon rolls. We're going to try to roll this into a tight, kind of like a log type of shape. So, do this. Like I said, you don't want it super, super, super tight, but you know, you also don't want it floppy and falling apart, so roll it so it's pretty firm. And if some little bits stick out at the end there, that's totally fine. We can actually probably just tuck that right in. And we're aiming to get this long enough to make 12 pretty good sized cinnamon rolls. Very good. I'm going to kind of move this towards me a little bit without handling it too much. Okay. So before we move on to our next step, which is cutting them and then placing them in our baking dish, we're going to want to make sure that our baking dish has a little bit of like a butter or an oil, kind of a non-stick surface in there. So I do the easiest thing I can, which is take a little bit of butter and I just rub it. My mom used to do this, and it's always worked really well. I just rub it right in there, and this will make it so the cinnamon rolls don't stick to the side of your pan. Now we're going to cut this into 12, as equal as we can, little chunks there. Alright, so for this step, you can use your dough scraper. You want something sharp. A butter knife probably won't cut it, if you know what I mean. So we're going to aim for 12 here. So what I'm actually going to use a sharp knife. I really like this knife. It's a good size. It's like my favorite knife. And it's pretty sharp. So to get 12, we're going to just cut it in half. And there's our little roly cinnamon roll. You can kind of gently reshape it if you have to. And we're just going to stick it in here. You might lose some of that cinnamon sugar filling during this process. It's okay. You can always sprinkle it over top before you bake them, so it's not going to waste. Before we put them into the oven, we're actually going to let them rest again for about 30 minutes. They're going to poof up a little bit more. Since we worked with them, they kind of got packed down a little bit after we rolled them up. So we're going to let them poof a little bit more. And then we are going to check on them, and then we should be able to throw them into the oven. If you want to start preheating your oven during this time, that's probably a good idea. You're going to want to set it to 400 degrees. And like I said, we have some extra cinnamon sugar here. We don't want that good stuff to go to waste, so I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on top here for some extra flavor and sweetness. There we go. So I'm going to cover this for about a half hour, and then we'll check back in. So these have been resting for about a half an hour. If you want to speed up your process a little bit, you can put them again in the 200-degree proofing chamber. Or, like I said, if it's a warmer day and you want to just leave them covered out, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. But it's really up to you, and, you know, your time frame. So we are going to look now at our rested cinnamon rolls, and they have poofed up beautifully. Very lovely. So at this point, we can pop them right into our 400-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll probably check them around 15 to 18 minutes and see where they're at. But that's what we're going to do now. I don't want to let them sit uncovered for too long. Pop them in. And I'm going to set my timer, and we'll be back. All right, we're going to take a peek at our cinnamon rolls. I'm going to turn the timer right off since I'm just going to go in head first. Ooh, they look lovely. A little golden brown on top. That's exactly how I like them. Look at these guys. I'm going to move them over here just more in the light. Those, oh my gosh, they smell so good. Oh, how beautiful. So these definitely are blazing hot right now. We're going to let these cool a bit. Oh, I'm so excited. That looks so pretty. And then we're going to put on our cream cheese frosting. Wow. Oh my gosh, I wish you guys could smell these right now. They look great. But we're going to let them cool, and we'll check back in when it's frosting time. So we're going to do a cream cheese frosting. Super simple. So to start off, we're going to do some, I'm just going to kind of add everything as I need it and mix it. So we're going to add, what did I do here? A half a cup of softened butter. You can microwave it for a few seconds, make sure it's soft enough where you can beat it. And then I'm doing 2 ounces of cream cheese. So before I add anything else, I'm just going to get these nice and blended. Alright, that's pretty smooth now. I'm actually going to add a little bit, probably half at a time of, in total it's going to come out to be about 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. So I'm going to add about half of that right now. That looks pretty smooth. I'm going to add 1/2 tablespoon of vanilla. So half of that. And at this point I'll add just a tiny little pinch of salt also. About 1/8 teaspoon. And that just kind of amplifies the flavors a little bit. It smells really good. I'm going to give it a little taste. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so now we're good to go with the frosting, and we'll put that on top of our cinnamon rolls when they're all done. We ended up dividing some of them up and put them outside, and we're going to give them to our neighbors because that's a lot of cinnamon rolls, even for us. However, these are cooled-ish. Cold enough where I'm going to put some cream cheese frosting on now. Sometimes it's nice to put on icing or frosting when cinnamon rolls are slightly warm because it kind of does that like oozy, melty thing, which I don't hate. So I'm going to do that. This is enough icing for all the cinnamon rolls, so I'm only going to use enough for 6 right here. So there's many different ways you can do this. Actually, I'm probably going to use this little offset spatula and really not do anything too fancy. We're going to go kind of rustic here and just kind of smear it on. Alright, I'm not going to fuss with it too much more. You can't really mess with perfection, and that looks pretty perfect to me. You can see it's kind of doing that melty, oozy thing right there, which is exactly how I like it. So we've got our warm cinnamon rolls, our fresh, smooth cream cheese frosting. I think there's only one thing left to do, and you probably know what it is. We're going to try one of these guys. I'll check back in after we try one and let you know how they are. Those cinnamon rolls turned out so good, and I do recommend eating them when they are still slightly warm. They were delicious with the cream cheese icing kind of oozing off of it. That was really fun. If you guys have any questions, let us know. We love making these videos. I hope you enjoy making cinnamon rolls at home, and we will see you guys next time.